Hi, this is Karen from Soterion, and you're listening to the SAP Security and GRC podcast with host Dudley Cartwright, helping you on your journey to effective access risk management in SAP. Soterion's GRC Trends Report documents 4 pivotal insights and predictions that we believe will shape the future of GRC. You're welcome to download a copy from our website, soterion.com. Our podcast will include a 4-part series to cover each prediction in more detail. In this episode, we will discuss one of these predictions. The drive towards standard business processes will cause widening of access. We'll be joined by industry experts Quintus Hougaard from Linkies Consulting and Emile Steyn from Soterion. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. And we're going to be talking about the next prediction that we've covered in our trends report. And that prediction is around making use of standard business templates and how those can potentially lead to an increase in the organization's sort of risk exposure. And what we mean by those standard business templates with specific to the SAP security and GRC space is things like making use of SAP standard business roles and also making use of a vendor's sort of standard or out-the-box rule set. So Emile, I'll throw the first question your way. Maybe if you can just share with us what we mean by SAP's standard business roles and what are the pros and cons for an organization to make use of those?
Okay. Thanks, Dudley. So, standard business role. So effectively, if we maybe take it a step back, so SAP has always provided standard SAP roles that's available with a release of SAP. So, and those roles can then be either used as is, or you can use that as a starting point to build your own roles. So for business roles, SAP has done the same thing and provided this container of access that is meant to be, or can be then used as a way of assigning access to users. Now, let's maybe start with the benefits. So when you assign or when you make use of those standard business roles, I think the main argument there is that it can facilitate a quicker go-live process and a quicker testing phase because the roles are already built and it's unlikely that there are any authorization issues. So we often see that being recommended by some of the implementation partners and say, go with the standard business roles, it will contain the access that you need. And if it doesn't, they'll just add onto that. So the downside to that, obviously, is that there's no business role that you can build that will be applicable to all organizations and companies across the world. So a business role, let's say the accountant. An accountant for one organization will do something completely different than the next. So, and the same will then, will apply for the SAP standard business role. It's a container with access, but it's not going to be that 100% fit for everyone. So it will, first of all, potentially be a big over allocation of access. So increasing the number of risks. I think that's very important. So you'll have a lot of users with additional access that they don't actually require to perform their job function. And I think the second part of that, if you are very risk aware and you use that as a starting point and subsequently you need to try and clean that up, that's going to be very, very difficult to do. So I think historically it's been much easier to clean up access. So you can maybe go with a wider assignments at the start because it's easier to remediate and take transactions away from users or take transactions away from roles. But with the introduction of Fiori for S4, it becomes even more complex to do so because now you've got an additional layer of catalogs that you also need to consider. It's not only at the transaction code level, and that adds to the complexity as well.
Thanks, Emile, for that. We do know that for a lot of, SAP themselves have said that, listen, that a company must make use of the standard business roles as a starting point and then maybe refine those to be more specific or relevant to the organization. But I think we are aware that if the security team are sort of running behind on the project and they under pressure from a resourcing perspective or time perspective, it is likely then that they're just going to make use of those standard business roles as is and not have the time to refine it. There is also maybe the argument of saying that sometimes when you're building roles, it's easier to start from the bottom up and build the roles from the bottom up rather than taking a predefined role and seeing what can be taken away. Especially if you've got some historical usage information, often easier to build from the bottom up. So maybe heading Quintus, to ask you, for those companies that then go and create their own roles, they're standardized within making use of business roles within their sort of GRC or IDM solution, or if they're making use of SAP composite roles, the degree to which the organization can standardize will vary. And maybe we can just run through a few of those scenarios.
Yeah, thank you, Dudley. I think 2 points. One point that you brought up is the principle of building from the bottom up. Obviously, is a far more sustainable solution for future changes. So, especially if those building up means smaller, functional, purpose-built roles that can be recycled in any other business role. One point that Emile brought up, I think, is quite valuable is in terms of, he touched on the risk appetite. What I've seen through all these years, at consulting, I used to be irritated getting to a client and you go there with your solution. They say, oh, no, but we're different, we're unique, and then I used to get, you all say that you're unique. But there is some truth in that, every client is different. It's not a one size fits all. So you do need to cater for that. And the risk appetite varies different, and it's nice to see that it's different countries where your client is based. There's a different, a bigger appetite for risk than in other countries. I have seen though that we've seen in the market that with globalization and people working remotely from different countries, they question that risk, culture. That yes, it's not all people are based in the country where the risk appetite of the company comes much often from the risk appetite that's evident in the country. So I think definitely there will be some customization. And your point also, Dudley, that depending on a lack of planning normally results at the end. That hold on, security is always something coming at the end of a project. So that forces a lot of companies to do this, grabbing something out of the box that's there, which unfortunately, like Emile's saying, you do pay at the end in terms of trying to remediate those risks, which will come down later down the line, not necessarily right up front. And all companies we know do have some customized transactions and objects. So you are going to change. In one or other way, there's going to be changes happening to that business role. So I like your idea of saying rather focus and building your own business template role, than trying to take something completely out of the box. So for me, it's this way up between. Emile referred to the efficiencies. Obviously, we're doing the standardization to be more efficient in the join and mover lever process, but then that to be weighed up against your risk appetite and what you're willing to work with. And I think the awareness, like you say, must be created from the risk owners who's going to sign off on those roles eventually. And if the security team doesn't make that aware, they at the end, unfortunately, is sitting with all that rework is happening at the end. So you try to avoid that by really planning up front.
So the degree to which standardization happens must become a business decision. But I think the challenge that a lot of organizations face is there's maybe an instruction that comes from the top to say, listen, we want standard business roles, whether those are making use of SAPs, predefined ones, or the organization or project team creating new ones. But I think the activity that the security team is, and you alluded to this now, where the security team we feel need to get a little bit more visible in this process is as they start defining these business roles, highlight what the access risk exposure is associated with that role before you go to production. Do workshops with the role owners and say, listen, if we standardize to this degree, we're going to end up with this number of SOD violations within this business role. Are you comfortable with that? maybe then give another scenario and say, listen, if we standardize to a slightly lesser degree, we're going to end up with half the number of SODs within this business role, and make it a business decision to say what degree of standardization do they want based on the number of risks associated with each of those levels of standardization. And it can become a business decision as to how much risk are they willing to live with in relation to the degree of standardization they want. As we've said in this session now, it's this way up always between the more you standardize, generally the more risk is introduced into the environment. So the business need to choose now. It's that balancing act. How much risk are they willing to live with in relation to the degree of standardization they want? But I think the security team need to get better at performing data analytic activities, presenting this information to the role owners, let the role owners see the data and make an educated, informed decision. And maybe just further to that is, I think a fault that many projects have is they build these roles without access to an access control solution. So there's no visibility of what the risk impact is while they're busy with the role build phase during this S4 project. And I think if we can encourage again a lot of these projects from the security team to make use of an access control solution during the role build phase, that role owners have got the risk visibility from the beginning, and they can make decisions, early on based on the risk. But I think often the role build happens, the roles get put into production, and that's sometimes the first time a risk analysis is performed on those roles. And often that's too late. As you're saying, Quintus, trying to fix roles in production is a very challenging exercise and can cause a lot of business disruption.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what I normally do in a case like that, when in doubt, if there's a question of, am I going to put this in one role or am I going to split it? I always, obviously, perhaps being an ex-auditor and more risk aware than many other people in that sense, I always say, listen, rather go a smaller business role. It's once you've done that, and the security team should push for that, because like I say, at the end, they're going to do this work, reworking again. I can always join, 2 business roles if I need to, but dissecting it afterwards. So when in doubt, rather go 2 business roles, split that role up into, it's easier because somewhere down the line we hit my audit and I'm going to have to try to read this, retesting, read things. So doing advice from me, from a security team, try to push the business. If there's any doubt, push him to split the role into, you have 1 more business role, so what's a big deal? You can just recycle it later.
So to be more granular in nature and rather assign multiple roles if need be, rather than trying to dissect
most definitely
in per bit role. Emile, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, what I wanted to just touch on, Dudley, you mentioned how the security team often, or at least now what we see with S4, is that a lot of potentially, you mentioned already the data analytics, but potentially that's not taking place, and also the lack of a segregation of duty tool to assist in that role build. But I think what we're also seeing is that because the move to S4 is so new for not only companies, but also for some of the consultants that need to advise, they often just go with those standard template roles purely because they don't know. So it's almost for them playing it safe. So don't want to say it almost becomes the blind leading the blind, but the business has such they place so much reliance on what the implementation partner or the security team is telling them, that if there's not that guidance from the technical people, then it doesn't leave those business decision makers with a lot of information. So they just typically go with the recommendation. And so I think it is very important also that just then to, Quintus, I think you already mentioned that, is to say, security is not always the first priority, but, I think we obviously always say, security is so important. If you want to get the real benefit from this, you need to start early. You need to start this discussion. The level of standardization that you want to achieve, you need to have that discussion early. Otherwise, if you leave it too late in the project, then there's no turning back.
There could be an argument there for saying that when you are involved with your S4 project or any project with that, it's so important to get the assistance from these consulting houses that specialize in security and GRC, because they come with the risk, more of the risk lens. Some of the big SIs may not have that. They will have some security people, but not come with the necessary risk lens that some of the more boutique, dedicated security consulting houses come with. So I think, we've always said they place a lot of value on the more dedicated consulting houses that specialize in certain areas, because I think they will make them more visible, more known to their client what the risk exposure is going to be based on that set of roles, where it may not be that important for some other of the consulting houses.
Dudley, you mentioned that often this decision to standardize is driven from the top. You get this decree given to, we can standardize. I think there's definitely a business case for the business role, if I can put it like that. With all the new cloud-based coming in and identity, access governance products coming up there, a business role has become more important than it was in the past, because it really does help with the efficiencies of the user, the whole onboarding process. So I have definitely understanding for that. Sometimes the decisions obviously is made at the level where there is no really understanding of the detail and the complexity of the technical level that we're dealing with. But point taken, there are definitely reasons for that decision coming from above because of the interface and the IDM solutions. But also, I definitely agreeing with you that putting that risk lens on that's not everybody's cup of tea. You have a lot of guys that's very technical and they're just doing it, and they come from a purely technical security background, and they do not have that risk lens. And that's is crucial what you're saying there, to bring that in either with the tool, even if you do a get stuck boutique consulting, also audit firm or whatever, to help you take a snapshot before, halfway through my process, where am I at, so I don't have to get these risks, in my action audit report, after I've gone live. So definitely making use of getting that view before, and not just relying on the technical strong resources, but bring that business process in. And I think you also alluded to the decision that is a business decision to do that and make, and the technical team can't make the business aware of what is in those roles without a tool. It's impossible. You can't expect that from them to do. And if you wait till after the effect, when you get your audit report, you have a lot of rework to do. So the planning, and then Emile was saying also, getting that upfront and doing the planning is really crucial in this process.
No, perfect. Okay, so moving on to the sort of standard or out-the-box rule set. So, Quintus, I'll throw this one your way. Can you just maybe spend a few minutes explaining what we mean by standard out-the-box rule sets, and what are the pros and cons of an organization making use of these?
Thank you. Obviously, the standard risk rule set that we're referring to comes with a tool. So the client will have then a risk tool that they will be using. They can also use a third party do the assessment using a standard rule set with a tool, or the audit firm doing that. Whoever use a tool to do that, that tool will have a predefined risk rule set, which is based on standard processes and audit principles of conflicting transactions that we know the audit firms will highlight. And that obviously it's a high level, just giving the two functions, and then these standard rule sets will then break it down to the lower object level, T-code object and function level. So I'm as I'm more against using a standard role from a template, I'm more comfortable suggesting to a client, listen, go with the standard risk rule set. You can do the customization later. That's easier to do, because yes, we know you're going to have Z transactions. Yes, we know you're not using checks anymore, like in America using checks, the rest of the world's not using checks anymore. We can take that out later. So easier to go with that. The pros, of course, from using the standard rule set is this is the last thing in the mind of any project manager to go and do risk rules and customization before project. Number one, they don't even know everything that's needed yet. So go with the standard rule set out of the box. It's sufficient to help you getting off the ground. The negative effect of that is that you're obviously not going to have your customized transactions included. So if you have a customized version, and typically we see a lot of clients bring something in with a post and park of journals, So yes, you're going to have a lot of false positives that everybody that you have the normal transactions you will report can have posting and parking a journal, but we know that the client have some exception tables or, where they check this. So, but that's false positive. You can then later define. So negatives is, yes, false positives. That's not too bad. You can live with that, and obviously you rather over-report in the risk than under-report. So the under-reporting comes in where you do not include your Z transactions. Fortunately, most of the audit firms don't have your Z transactions in their rule set either. So it's not you're going to be highlighted by the audit. But of course we want the client to be responsible employee for the company, really highlighting the risk. And therefore, you have to get to that point where you customize that rule set later to make it also more focused. Because if the one risk you do have, if you just reach out of the risk rule set, you activate all the risks, you're going to have such a lot of results that the people's going to start thinking, oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, I can't live like this. So if you use a standard risk rule set, start with the high risks in the standard rule set. Don't go down to the medium and low risk, because you're going to chase a lot of your business away, and focus on those high risks. You will pick up those high risks is a high rating because of the industry have indicated that. And then your advantages of obviously customizing the risk rule set is you really, I feel during that process, we had this discussion before, is it's used to educate the business. They understand the risk. They can buy in. You get ownership taken in. There's a lot of usage benefits of going through that process, but no need to delay your project because you don't have a customized rule set. Go with the standard as it is, and then fix it later after the project, when you have your more time and more risk-focused people around.
Yeah, perfect. Emile, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think it also speaks a bit to the different maturity levels of customers. Where an out-of-the-box rule set or standard rule set, you can get those customers, path to just to identify what are the key issues. And as Quintus said, I think it's very important in that is, yes, not everything that will be highlighted will be equally as important to every customer because it's a standard rule set. But to identify those items that are really important to them, I think that's very valuable. Where the organization that's very mature, for them the customization of the rule set becomes more and more important, because there's additional activities like a user access review that places reliance on the quality of the rule set also. So I think for a customer embarking on a project, either role build or just the initial cleanup without any historic knowledge of what are the issues within the environment, a standard rule set is more than sufficient. But as the maturity of that company grows in the access control space, it also means that the customization becomes more and more important for them.
Okay, so maybe then just to summarize, on the standardization, making use of the SAP standard business roles, we say, listen, try not use them as is, either refine them to be more relevant to your organization, or better yet, rather define your own roles based on your organization's specific needs. Standardization is great. The degree to which you standardize will be very sort of company specific. What industry are you in? How big is your organization? How small is your organization? And many factors of the degree to which you can standardize. But I think if the security team can just make sure that they provide the necessary information to role owners, that they can make the informed decision as to the degree of standardization that they're comfortable with based on the amount of risk that is going to be incorporated in those roles when they're built. And then moving on to the rule sets, of course, I agree 100% with you there. I think making use of the standard out-the-box rule set is far a lesser evil than making use of SAP standard business roles. The standard business roles is something that must be dealt with very effectively before go live, where the standard out-the-box rule set is something that can be addressed post go live. Yes, there are some deficiencies and some downsides to that, but it is something that you can play catch up much easier with refining the rule set post go live than trying to play catch up with just refining the roles to be more appropriate in the live environment. Good. Okay. Well, Thank you very much, guys. Emile
Thank you.
and Quintus, thanks for joining us.